What battle was the deadliest in human history? The Battle of Changping, a military campaign during the Warring States period of ancient China, was a battle fought between the two strongest military powers of China's central plains. It was fought by the State of Qin against the State of Zhao, northwest of what is today Gaoping, located in the southeast of Shanxi province. I discovered the story of this battle when I first came to China, and this story began my interest in Chinese history, stories that are rarely told in Western media. After a bitter 2-year stalemate that lasted from 262 to 260 BC, the battle ended in a decisive victory for the State of Qin. A vast majority of Zhao captives were ruthlessly executed, which led to an unrecoverable loss of manpower that permanently crippled the State of Zhao. The Battle of Changping is known as the greatest and longest battle of human antiquity, infamous for being one of the deadliest battles in human history, with several 100,000 soldiers buried alive in the aftermath. The main historical records of the battle were sourced in the records of the Grand Historian, written more than a century after the battle's conclusion, with estimates of around 450,000 deaths on the Zhao side and another 250,000 Qin dying. Emperor Xuanzong of Tang, who lived from 685 until 762, later built a temple over a collection of some of the human remains. Scattered bones and mass graves continue to be discovered on the site in modern times. Prelude. In the year 265 BC, the State of Qin, at that time the strongest of the warring states, attacked its neighbouring state of Han, capturing the city of Qinyang, which effectively cut off Han's Shandang commandery from its southern heartland, making Shandang an isolated northern enclave. The Qin further isolated Shandang from the Han by capturing mountain passes and fortresses across the Taihan Mountains, with Shandang poised to fall. Rather than allow the city to be taken by the Qin, Shandang's governing commander, Feng Ting, offered the area to another neighbour, the State of Zhao. Shandang was a productive and strategically important location just to the west of the Zhao capital of Handan, and the Qin capture would offer easy access into the heartland of Zhao territory. King Xiaocheng of Zhao agreed to the offer and sent his senior general, Lian Po, to lead an army and secure the region from any Qin encroachment. Early battle skirmishes. In 262 BC, led by Wang He, the army of the State of Qin invaded Shandang, with Feng Ting evacuating his commandery. The Zhao army was also mobilized, with Lian Po setting up 3 defensive lines that pivoted south of the Changping Pass. In April of that year, the Zhao army encountered the Qin forces for the first skirmish to the west of Gaoping Pass, which was Lian Po's first line of defense, with the Zhao suffering from several defeats during those initial confrontations with the Qin. The first defensive line soon collapsed, with Zhao commander in Gaoping among those killed as the Qin captured Gaoping Pass, in addition to 3 more Zhao strongholds. Lian Po decided the only way the Qin could be contained was to avoid field battles and to hold the second defensive line along the Dan River, a tributary of the Qin River that traverses present-day Gaoping City. Lian Po began focusing on the reinforcement of his defensive positions along the east bank of the Dan River through the building of fortified ramparts along the mountain foothills of the river valley, hoping this strategy would exhaust the Qin army, as the Qin's resupply routes were longer than that of the Zhao. The Qin army did, however, attempt to cross the river, even on one occasion, breaching the second defensive line, but they did not have sufficient numbers to fully exploit that advance and were eventually beaten back. But by July 262 BC, the two armies found themselves facing a stalemate that lasted for the next 2 years, divided by the river. By early 260 BC, both sides had heavily reinforced their positions with total combatants numbering around 1 million. Change of Zhao strategy. While Liang Po's strategy of holding and wearing out the Qin army was working, problems began arising back in the state of Zhao. With the Qin desperate to break the stalemate, they sent spies into the states of Zhao and Han with the intention of spreading rumors that Liang Po was too senile and cowardly to fight. King Xiaocheng of Zhao had already become dissatisfied with the strategy of dragging out the war for too long, and this was becoming a financial burden through tax collection to pay for the war. The Zhao king decided to replace Liang Po with Zhao Kuo, the overconfident and militarily untested son of the famous late general Zhao Shi. On his deathbed, Zhao Shi had told his wife that his son should never be given the command of an army because the younger Zhao regarded wars as easy games and overlooked the risk involved, having never experienced any actual battles. When Zhao Kuo was appointed general, his mother, Lady Zhao, as well as Minister Lin Shangru, attempted to persuade King Xiaocheng to rescind that appointment, but their appeals failed. Lady Zhao, however, did manage to extract a promise from the king that the Zhao clan would not be punished if Zhao Kuo lost the war. Upon hearing of the new appointment in the Zhao hierarchy, the Qin also replaced their military leader, bringing in renowned General Bai Qi to replace Wang He. Bai was infamous for his brutal efficiency in using annihilation tactics in battle. This appointment was highly classified in order not to alert the Zhao, and anyone leaking the news was liable to be facing the death penalty. The defeat of the State of Zhao. In July 260 BC, Zhao Kuo arrived at Changping and took over command of the Zhao army. He almost immediately discarded all the previous defensive strategies undertaken by his predecessor and took his main army north to cross the Dan River and attack the left flank of the Qin army positioned along the west bank of the upper reaches of the river. Zhao Kuo's strategy was his offensive move would be enough to break the resolve of the Qin army. A flaw of this move was that Zhao left most of his army's provisions stored at their main camp to the south of the river, a camp that was now undermanned and could not easily be secured along the increased length of the supply line this move had now created that stretched across the front of the Qin army, albeit across the river. Unbeknown to Zhao Kuo, such a move had been anticipated by Bai Qi, with Bai's response being to reduce the strength of his left flank to draw his enemy into his trap. Although his left flank appeared to be a weak point, it was surrounded by a line of hill forts further to the west. When Zhao Kuo crossed the river for his attack, the Qin quickly abandoned their left flank and withdrew towards the hills. Encouraged by this, the Zhao army followed, sensing an easy victory. However, a Qin detachment of 25,000 men had traversed north through the Taiyu Mountains to create a wide encirclement behind Zhao lines. This move cut off Zhao's supply lines from the north, while another detachment of 5,000 light cavalry armed with bows and crossbows crossed the river and cut off connections between the Zhao's new advanced position and their main camp, effectively splitting the Zhao army into two. While Bai Qi's main force immediately advanced to secure vantage positions and choke off any exits from the river valley. These complex maneuvers eventually completed a triangular encirclement that trapped Zhao Kuo's forces within the river valley. Zhao Kuo quickly found his offensive strategy against the Qin left flank was not going quite as he planned, as his advance was abruptly brought to a halt by the Qin hill fortifications. He then discovered his rear flanks were being ambushed by the Qin cavalry as provisions were becoming in short supply. He then abandoned his attack and attempted to recross the river. However, the Qin counterattacked and pursued the fleeing Zhao army, inflicting heavy casualties upon their retreating foe. After finding his escape route blocked and unable to reunite with what remained of his army in the south, the army of Zhao Kuo dug in on a hillside and awaited the arrival of reinforcements. One factor in Zhao foreign policy since 295 BC had been one of opportunism, having frequently shifted from anti-Qin alliances to those in favour of the Qin. This policy led to a loss in diplomatic goodwill with its neighbouring states. Therefore, as the Battle of Changping unfolded, the State of Zhao was unable to secure any help from its traditional allies, including the states of Chu or Qi. King Zhao Xiang of Qin used this opportunity to mobilize additional soldiers against Zhao by bestowing one grade of noble rank on the population as merits, as he conscripted every able-bodied male of the age of 15 to the Changping frontline to further ensure the encirclement remained intact. With their army firmly entrapped, Bai Qi began launching attacks to wear out the Zhao army and prevent any chance of escape. Zhao Kuo's improvised hill positions were besieged non-stop for 46 days, and by September, with winter's arrival becoming ever closer, his army's struggles for survival grew ever more desperate. The starving soldiers of the Zhao army began slaughtering their horses and allegedly even murdering and feeding on each other. The fighting was so fierce that half of the Qin soldiers were killed in battle, but the exhausted and demoralized Zhao army was unable to escape their fate. Zhao Kuo was eventually killed by Qin archers and crossbowmen when leading a group of his finest soldiers in a final attempt to breach the encirclement. With their commander dead, the remaining Zhao soldiers gave up and surrendered. Aftermath of the battle. In wanting to take advantage of his victory, Bai Qi's intention was to quickly lay siege to Handan, but feeding and guarding such a large number of prisoners of war would be a huge burden, and releasing them was out of the question, as the majority of the local population was hostile to Qin rule, and those Zhao captives, if released, would likely get reconscripted or participate in any revolts that occurred. Bai Qi's solution to the problem was to have the majority of his prisoners executed, and most were buried alive. Only 240 of the youngest soldiers were spared and released back into Zhao territory. To further spread the fear, those executions spread throughout the conquered territory. The ancient historian Sima Qian wrote in his journal about 150 years after the battle that more than 450,000 Zhao soldiers were killed either during or after the battle. However, King Zhao Xiang wanted to delay any attack on Handan so the soldiers had ample time to rest, and refused Bai Qi's request to press forward with the attack. In frustration, Bai Qi resigned and later refused to lead the army when asked by the king the following year, claiming that the window of opportunity had long passed. King Zhao Xiang was so angered by this refusal that he ordered Bai Qi's death by forced suicide. The Qin army then continued attacking the Zhao under other leaders, where they were met with heavy resistance. Lord Pingyuan of Zhao successfully achieved aid from the states of Chu and Wei, which led to a devastating defeat for the Qin at the Battle of Handan. This defeat halted the Qin campaign of territorial expansion for the following 3 decades. Long term, the Battle of Changping had profound consequences. Prior to the campaign, the Zhao state had been one of the most militarily powerful of the warring states, and was arguably the only one powerful enough to resist the expansion of the state of Qin. Instead, Zhao never fully recovered from its drastic loss of manpower suffered at Changping. Those 3 years of war had financially and domestically exhausted the Qin army as well. The differences in the fate of the 2 states was in manpower capabilities. Within a decade, the Qin had recovered to its former strength and was able to exert its strength and gain complete strategic dominance over its rival states.
Just 40 years later, in 221 BC, the Qin had conquered all the other of the warring states under King Zhaoxiang's great-grandson, King Zeng, unifying all of China under a centralized dynasty for the first time in the history of the country. That brings us to the end of this video, highlighting a period of Chinese history that occurred during the warring states era of ancient China that saw the dominance of the state of Qin and the eventual unifying of China under one emperor, Qin Shi Huang. If you've enjoyed watching and has shown you a little detail of life and events here in China, then your subscribing to my channel would mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching. Make sure you click on the link to the next video, and until the next time, goodbye for now.